Thanks to all three of you. I much appreciate it. We have a little bit of time for questions before the break. More than glad to entertain questions from the audience, if you have some. Yes?
We have a lot of customers overseas. Does anyone know what those libraries are?
So the question was whether or not non-North American libraries, how about if I put it that way, make use of these discovery environments. They do. There's certainly, I know a little bit about this, but I'm more than glad to cede to others here. They do. All of the products that have been mentioned here are sold internationally with, pockets where they tend to be more or less used. There are, in some parts of the world, also some local players. So if you have content in a particularly a non-English speaking country, having conversations with libraries there, maybe attending a conference or sending someone to kind of understand who those local players are, because they're not always as engaged with these kinds of initiatives. Great question. Anything to add, panelists? Okay, thank you. Other questions? Well, I have one, and I don't know if it's a question so much as a concern that as I've been thinking about this issue comes to mind. In the good old days of print, the only real expectation that libraries had of publishers from a rich metadata perspective was to provide metadata that related to the publisher's supply chain. And there were primarily national libraries and other organizations who took responsibility for providing the kind of metadata that was used for discovery, first in physical card catalogs and later in online catalogs. Now, I'm talking here a little more about book content, but obviously indexing and abstracting services played a comparable role for journal content. As we've moved into the electronic world, I don't necessarily see that particular really important aspect of all of this. It seems to be falling through the cracks a little bit. JSTOR is a great example of an organization that has built metadata in conjunction with its contributing publishers, and there certainly are others, but there's not as clear a where do I get my metadata from answer today in the ecosystem of ebooks and electronic journal content and growing digital content of a variety of different forms, as there used to be in the days when everything was print. So I think there's a challenge there that that we all need to consider. I know that there's some smaller university presses that sometimes work with their colleagues in technical services in their university to try to provide metadata. Maybe there are more opportunities for those kinds of collaborations between those who may have the bibliographic descriptive metadata expertise and those who are providing the content. Yes?
To that point, there has not been until very recently a standard DTD or a standard schema for describing metadata for books. Even if you have that schema and are working with it, the difference between how chapters relate to books and how, say, journal articles relate to journals is not being handled well. A lot of the discovery So we kind of understand why everybody says use Google, and Google Scholar has become our top referrer. So, you know, if you guys who are customers of these systems want these things to work, it's not just a matter of tuning your system, as has been mentioned already, but it's also a matter of putting a little pressure on the discovery services from your end to get all of the data into their systems and get it correct. We have found so much bad metadata. We've just found a whole raft of links that have been out of date for like 4 years in OCLC for all of our journal content. And it's because it was put in by a library here and a library there, and you know that's how OCLC was getting their database built up, and it's not authoritative and it's not correct, and getting it fixed is a huge problem.
I think you've identified a really important element of the environment here, and I think all the panelists would encourage. It's unfortunate that we don't have a representative from one of the discovery services here. It would have been good to do that. It's sometimes challenging to put competitors next to each other on a stage, though, as I think you well know. But I do appreciate that, and I would hope that both the publishers and the librarians recognize that critical role between, if you have the metadata, but it cannot be harvested or ingested in ways that make sense for discoverability, then it really doesn't do you any good at all.
Where are you from?
American Society of Civil Engineers.
Thank you. There was a question in the back. Yes. Right. Yeah.
And my hope is that the libraries can help in this conversation if we are aware of where the breakdown is, and help encourage discovery providers to model better and to make better use of the metadata. Right now, what is one of the challenges to us is we're not really sure often what the issue that's causing this is. Is the metadata being provided and not used? Is it not being provided, et cetera? So our hope for these conformance checklists is that they can help be a conversation starter to say, okay, you know, this content is important to us, you're receiving it, you're not handling it, or, you know, your content is important to us and we need you to share it with the discovery services. So hopefully we'll now start seeing the emergence of these conformance checklists being put to use and really be able to dig in and engage in the conversation and help make things better. I do want to follow up a little bit on one of your comments about the ebooks, because I actually think it's not just in the areas of ebooks where this metadata question and where it starts in the chain comes in. At my institution, we do a lot now with vendor-supplied records, and the cataloging resources, even internally, aren't always there to augment records. So figuring out ways in which there can be better quality metadata, regardless of the format of the materials, up the chain is becoming increasingly important. I'm not sure what the exact venue is to work on that, but metadata is expensive, and I think we all spend too much time rekeying or augmenting the same metadata, and there's got to be a better way.
I agree with you. Yeah, Bruce.
I hope that NISO, in this effort, which has been fantastic up to this point, makes these conformance checklists public. I really think libraries and publishers need to understand who's doing what and how well they're doing it. It's like on-time performance for an airline.
Yeah.
And I really, it's critical.
There'll be an app for our phone soon for all of these things, Bruce, right?
And to comment on that, we will be having kind of a directory of conformance statements linked from the ODI site. So look for that starting at the end of June.
Thank you. I think we're running over our time here. Again, thanks very much to the panelists, and thank you so much, audience.